This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by Intercontinental San Francisco Hotel. They are located in the Bay Area and they are hosting our podcast in San Francisco. We are going to San Fran and Vegas for preseason. So we're not able to go to LA at this time, but we're doing the Vegas Clasico and then we're doing the game against Club America in San Francisco a couple of days later. And we're doing a podcast in each city. And we design it a certain way so that if you're going to Vegas for Clasico or you're going to San Francisco for the game against Club America, you'll also be able to attend our podcast. So if you want to book your spot to our podcast, meet us, meet a bunch of other Madridistas, and have a great time and make lifelong connections, then click the link in the show notes and book it soon because prices go up on July 15th. So do it in the next 5 days or so. By the way, the Intercontinental, it's located in the heart of the Bay Area. Immerse yourself in the heart of the city at the Intercontinental San Francisco Hotel. Their prime location in the heart of San Francisco, near Moscone Center and Union Square, allows you to explore the city's culture and charm while enjoying elegantly appointed rooms and luxurious amenities. Host your next event in their beautifully customizable meeting rooms and ballroom, while an elevated dining experience awaits you at their Loose Restaurant and Bar 888. Again, book your stay at Intercontinental San Francisco and also book your spot to our podcast. Links are in the show notes. Coming up is a podcast with Matt regarding marketing, the terrible job La Liga has done in that department, how Real Madrid can monetize more of their stuff, and what is the future of the league? How can we fix it? How can we make it more marketable? How can we make it better? And just other stuff. We get pretty deep. Metaverse, technology, everything else in between. So enjoy it. And to set us up, as always, Ray Hudson and Derek Ray. Let's go.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Probably Benzema needs to rest and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First rate podcast as well. Of course, Perez Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
All right, welcome to a Saturday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. This is Kiyan Sobhani. I'm joined today by Matt Wiltse. I'll also be joined by Matt Wiltse tomorrow for another podcast. We're doing a historical segment. We wanted to get something out there, though, and I actually was inspired by Matt's article recently. His Monday musings are very interesting, and if you're interested in reading Matt's weekly column, it's a proper thing now. It goes up every Monday. It even has some artwork. Our resident cartoonist, Finn, made a little logo thing for him. It's a caricature of Matt holding a pencil, I think, and it's called Matt's Monday Musings, and we keep that pinned pretty much throughout the whole week on managingmadrid.com, so you won't miss it. So go check it out. And the reason I wanted to bring Matt on is because his last one was pretty interesting. I mean, they're all interesting, but it was up my alley. It was about finances and marketing and branding, and I'm really interested in that stuff. And I think La Liga's done a terrible job of all that stuff in the last few years. So we're going to bring Matt on to talk about it. Matt, first of all, how are you? Last time we spoke, we did a podcast on Wednesday. You were recovering from food poisoning. Any updates on that? Was it officially diagnosed?
No official diagnosis. So I don't know if it was food poisoning or just regular sickness, but doing better. I still tried to eat like a normal meal yesterday for lunch, and then my stomach was off the whole rest of the day, so I didn't have dinner or anything. But today, I think hopefully a little bit more back to normal. I'm just taking it easy on whatever I eat, so eating really plain food. But it's been like a week, and it's crazy. I still can't eat like normally.
Did you guys ever go through the thing I got you in your freezer? Remember I brought you something and I put it in your freezer.
It was like a sausage thing, right?
It was a plant-based sausage.
Yeah, I had it.
Cool. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it just got lost in the depths of your freezer or if it actually got eaten. All right, that aside, let's talk about Monday musings and let's talk about your article, which is entitled How Formula One Fueled Florentino Perez's Super League Obsession. So off the bat, what inspired you to write about this particular topic?
It was actually from a podcast we had done, I guess, a Tuesday Tapas. I had like briefly mentioned it to you because I'd seen some of these stats on how Formula One had grown. Oh, I think because folks had asked us like, what are some shows to watch? And I brought up the Drive to Survive, I think, because that was something that I had zero interest in Formula One, like knew nothing about it. And then I watched that series and I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating. Like you get to hear the stories behind it. You get to know the personalities. You get to really understand the sport and like the intensity and the pressure that they're under. And you have a whole newfound appreciation and you're interested in it. And like that, it definitely happened to me. And the docuseries was done so well that like it's just captured so much of the American attention, especially, and that was the market they were going after. And it's just that single driver alone. I mean, I know in my article, and I'm sure we'll get to it, like I mentioned a bunch of different things that Liberty Media has done since taking over Formula One, but the biggest driver, without a doubt, the catalyst to all this has been that Drive to Survive docuseries, which is so popular. And it's made huge waves in the US, and the US market is coveted so like by all these European, whether it be European franchises or clubs, like it's coveted so heavily because even if you just get like a small percentage of that market, the revenue there is massive. And like NFL, so I think one of the stats I saw that I didn't put in the article was like the NFL and the NBA, they don't have nearly as many fans or like followers as, let's say, I think it was Formula One even, but like I did put in the article like how Real Madrid has more fans than all the NBA teams like combined. And so like if you can capture, and yet they're generating massive amounts of revenue. If you can capture some of that American market, like it just totally changes the landscape. And I think to the point you brought up earlier, like La Liga has definitely fallen behind in the US, specifically the US market to the Premier League.
I was reading the comments on your article. Someone actually brought up an interesting point in that even during like the peak of La Liga in our lifetime anyway, which was Ronaldo versus Messi, Pep versus Mourinho, and even after Mourinho left, I mean, the Clásico was a bloodbath. It was an absolute cash cow. It was the greatest thing to watch on TV. Like it truly was. The bad blood between the two, the absolute plethora of superstars and talent, all that stuff. Even then, like at that time, I'm not sure they had. It was beIN who had the rights. A lot of people didn't have beIN, and and I'm not sure if they even capitalized on that era. And right now we have ESPN, which is a bigger giant. But even now, like we'll get to it. Okay, before we get to that, actually, this is the start of your article is interesting because it's something that I'm very interested and curious about, and something I've been learning a lot about over the years. That number of fans does not equate the money earned. Something I've learned in the past like few years from having friends who live in Hollywood and family who live in Hollywood and are actors over there. A lot of these Instagram influencers, for example, are completely broke. Even the ones who have like millions of followers, they have no idea how to monetize their social media. At best, they're getting free stuff. They're getting gifts and stuff in the mail and whatever. And you brought up this, and you started your article by saying that you talk about like there are clubs who have 400, like even if you have 400 million followers, monetizing it is not a given. And you brought up the excerpt from Simon Cooper's book, The Barcelona Complex. And I'm not going to read the whole spiel that you inserted into your article, but he's talking about basically, a Barcelona fan. Barcelona can have so many fans around the world. And he says the world's population, 45% of it lives in 4 countries: China, India, Indonesia, and the US. And you can have, and this is not me saying anything out of my own, just from my own words. This is literally in the book. He cites this example. He says a supporter in Mumbai, India, might walk around in a pirated Messi shirt, and watch all the team's games in a local bar without ever paying a rupee to the club. If he was one of Barcelona's 100 million plus Facebook followers, then Facebook rather than Barca had his personal details. So the monetization of having a lot of followers is also another challenge. What is one way that you think you can tap into monetizing a fan base like that?
So before I get into that, like I want to extrapolate just kind of on the points you just made, because I think like not only, so the Facebook example, like not only does Barcelona not have his data, but they have to pay Facebook if they want to get his data. So there's all these middlemen, and the clubs are actually paying for data that they should they should easily have access to, and should be able to pull from their own databases and be able to see kind of how far their graphs goes. And that's the thing, like all these the clubs are almost kind of have been a step behind, and so now they're stuck paying all these different middlemen, whether it be Facebook or UEFA or you name it, agents. And so it's just it's almost backwards. But and if you think about like that stat, I put that excerpt in the article because that stat almost blew me away. I didn't even realize that basically 50% of the population, of the global population, lives in 4 countries. That's insane. And so like if you're not tapped into those markets, that's 50% of the world that you could be like attracting to your brand, to your product, and potentially finding value. And so that's like, that blew my mind. So I think like how can they turn this around, I guess, to your question? It's a good question. It's basically what all club executives are trying to do now. They're trying to take out that middleman and just have a direct relationship with their fans. And I think one thing I could see happening in the future, for example, is clubs having like almost like the Real Madrid TV becomes a streaming service, which then showcases all, like, clubs take hold of their own TV rights. And so then you pay for like Real Madrid TV, you pay for whichever clubs you want to see. And then they have your information. They're monetizing off of that. See all their games. You can see behind the scenes footage. You can get like documentaries, whatever you want. I think like that's an avenue we could see coming down the line, almost like a Netflix for clubs, where they're building that out. I think eventually the metaverse will be something that becomes crucial to clubs' kind of philosophy and what they're going to use to try and not only monetize but just get fans' data, because that's part of it. They want to understand where they're growing. They want to understand where their fan base is, who their fan base is, and better get to know the details around these individuals so that they can cater to them. Like if they see that, okay, we've got this demographic and this age group and this population, and over here we've got this, like, let's center and focus our attention. Oh, we've got a ton of fans in Los Angeles. Okay, maybe let's build a satellite club and like send Real Madrid coaches out there and foster a club, like something along those lines. And I read a great article, kind of going back to the metaverse point. I read a great article from La Gallerina, and they kind of extrapolated on all of that and talked about how basically like you'll almost be able to, once the metaverse is up and running, like who knows how far down the road this is, like 20, 30 years, but like you could be at the Santiago Bernabeu watching the game like while in the metaverse. And if clubs can get people to pay for that, and like almost like it is a ticket to be at the Santiago Bernabeu, like there you go, you just expanded that value like I don't even know, infinitely. So there's a lot of different things I think that will come up, but like Simon Cooper wrote about, and one of the executives told him, is like football clubs need to start thinking like tech startups now, and they have to figure out kind of like what's coming next in order to get ahead of it instead of keep paying all these middlemen.
You bring up a lot of interesting points, and I'm just trying to figure out where to start. I mean, the metaverse scares me in a lot of ways because I think I'm really worried about society, about never leaving their house again, never socializing again, never seeing nature again, or maybe at the very least, hopefully they'll socialize within the metaverse. But the Bernabeu tickets and stuff like that is really interesting. I mean, I don't think you can necessarily...
We can do podcasts together in the metaverse, Kiyan.
This is true. I mean, I'm embracing the good side of it, but I'm worried about the other side of it. But because I feel like it's already people are not leaving their house. But it is super interesting. I mean, Barca TV is... I don't know exactly if it's in response to something like this, but I imagine it was part of their strategy because Barca TV has Barca TV Plus now. And that's something where you have to sign up, you have to pay, you get a free trial at first if you want, then you got to pay to be a part of, and you get exclusive content. So Diego is part of Barca TV Plus, Diego Lorin. So when a club signs a player, like if Barca sign, they've signed Kessié, when Dani Alves signed, Diego interviews all of these guys. And I'm like, Diego, you should post the interview on social media. He's like, I can't because it has to go exclusively on Barca TV Plus. I wonder how far Real Madrid are away from that kind of model. I don't know about you, but I would probably pay for like if like Real just started putting out exclusive content, but I would want it to be like really good content because that's just me. Yeah. I wouldn't want it to just be like, oh, let's ask Eduardo Camavinga what his favorite food is and put it on put it on exclusive Real TV Plus. If it was like cool analysis that was unbiased and stuff, I don't know if the club would do that, but if it was really interesting, something like that, I would pay for it. The idea,
or even like sorry to interrupt, but even like the documentaries they do after the Champions League, like it's called In the Heart of La Decima or whatever. Like if they put that, like that type of stuff, people love. Like you get to see you get to see how they're celebrating behind the scenes, plane, like some of the conversations. Yeah,
the Zidane halftime team talk.
If you put that type of you put that type of content behind like Real Madrid Plus, then 100%, I'd do it.
Yeah, I also wonder if clubs would band together and put something together like that. Obviously, it'd be funny. Like you should just get the 12 Super League teams to put together an exclusive Netflix
bundle,
a bundle where every club has this. I think that's definitely inevitable to some capacity because I think Real Madrid have always wanted to decrease dependency on other people. Like they essentially the Super League was a way to decrease dependency on UEFA and FIFA so that they could be in control of stuff. And I wonder how far we are away from that. The metaverse definitely is something cool. There was something else I wanted to say, but maybe I'll think about it and it'll come back to me. But the ideas that Florentino put forth, a lot of people didn't necessarily agree with him when he's talking about, younger fans losing interest and all that stuff, and we have to change something. I think he's right. I think if you just look around, there's so many distractions that kids have. Whether it's Fortnite, I keep using Fortnite as an example because I don't really know what else happens in video game world. But Fortnite, video games, he brought up the fact that fans are watching highlights instead of games. I don't know if there's a way to prove that, although the numbers are shocking. Like La Liga's viewership has dropped. Like that's proven. That's in the numbers, so that we can prove. Whether you want to argue that's about stars or not, it's a different discussion. In my opinion, either way, whether it's stars or marketing, the marketing is terrible from La Liga. We'll get to that in a sec too. But the other thing is that I also kind of believe it because even me, who has to watch all of these games, I'm not sitting on the edge of my seat staring at this every single second. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of boring Real Madrid games to sit through even. And I don't blame fans necessarily for wanting to catch up later, or like just flip through highlights, or like play video games and then the game's on the background. They got the dual screen action going. That's the way I deal with Raptors games, and I'm a Raptors fan. I love the Raptors. I'm not watching every Raptors game. I'm watching a lot of highlights in the morning. So I'm kind of sympathetic towards that view. I'm not sure how you change that, but do you have any ideas on that? Because I think, maybe you can argue the broadcast sucks, generally speaking. I'm just talking about like literally quality of the broadcast is not as high as the Premier League, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think the Premier League is a good example of like what could be done differently, especially to capture the U.S. market. Like they're doing a tremendous job here in the U.S. NBC Sports has been doing a tremendous job for years now. They've got like great panelists. They've got just even like you said, the broadcast quality. Like I remember once seeing a like side by side picture of a Premier League broadcast quality versus a La Liga, and like just the colors, the contrast, and like the camera, like everything is just 10 times better. And like those things make a huge difference. And so I think there's a lot that needs to be done. And you mentioned like La Liga viewership numbers are down 30% since 2018, 2019. And only 7.5% of their viewers fell in the 13 to 24-year-old demographic. So like that's their smallest percentage, is that demographic. And that's the demographic that you need to focus on the most. And so it's definitely concerning. And when Florentino said, when he went on El Chiringuito, he talked about how 16 to 20-year-old fans aren't interested in football, and 40% of young people aren't interested in football. And everybody kind of blew up at that and was like, no, I'm 18 or whatever, and I love football. And like all these people like came back. But the reality is, yeah, that's you. And the people on football Twitter are probably a small percentage of the global population, and we're all diehards.
Also, there is a bit of dishonesty there from even those people, I think.
Yeah. And so, and to your point, like, yeah, is a 16 to 24-year-old who's kind of a casual Real Madrid fan, is he eagerly waiting to watch Elche versus Real Madrid at 8 a.m. On a Saturday? Like, I don't think so. And so I think that's kind of the point Florentino was making. Look, I sympathize with folks who say that, like, well, we don't want the money. Like, this is football. This is tradition. Like, this is La Liga. This is we enjoy going to these smaller provinces and playing these smaller teams. And like, this is what the history of European football and Spanish football is. And I 100% agree with that. Like, I personally like love that, and exploring the culture and the traditions and everything like that. But the reality is that if you don't improve your product and you don't start generating that revenue, then you're not going to La Liga is going to keep going downhill to a point where those who want to access it are only going to be, it's not going to be on ESPN Plus in the US for however cheap it is, like $52 a year. It's not going to be accessible across the globe, but you're only going to see the big Real Madrid games unless you're paying tons of money, because that's just going to be the reality. It's not going to be broadcast anywhere because nobody's watching it. So you have to have at the end of the day, if you have a product that's more popular, like, it's better for everyone, because it just improves all those things we talked about: the broadcast, the access, the you name it, like the color commentary and the both before and after post-match analysis and all of that. Like, it just improves tenfold. And so if La Liga really, I know La Liga is focusing on it, but there's still a lot of work to do. And just it just feels like the Premier League's so far ahead that it's almost impossible to catch up to them. And you mentioned, like, we had that decade of Cristiano and Messi. Imagine if in the US we put those games for free for air on ESPN or NBC or one of the big channels, and like La Liga just said, you know what, we're going to put this free for air because we want to capture that US market. We're willing to take the hit here. And in the short term, it may hurt us on TV TV money deal and whatever it may be. But in the long term, we're going to capture so much of the U.S. market. We're going to get all these Messi, Ronaldo, Real Madrid, Barcelona fans that it's going to be worth it for us in the long term. And I think it was just too short term and too short-sighted to do a deal with beIN Sport where there were like so few people had access to that.
I want to make a point about the kid who may not wake up at Saturday 7 a.m. to watch Real Madrid versus Elche. I think, to be fair, I think there are many kids who will. And certainly as a 13-year-old kid, I was the kind of guy who would wake up at any hour of the day to watch Real Madrid play because I was in love with the club. And even in terms of buying jerseys, growing up, I always had the choice to buy a shitty knockoff or something from the club. And I always chose something from the club, not even because of quality purposes, but because it felt like the right thing to do to put my money to the club that I love. But I don't think Florentino is referring to those fans, and he's not referring to us. I think he's referring to the fans who are not fans yet, to bring them in. How do we do that? And the club was in full control of the Amazon Prime documentary, and I think that was part of their the objective of that was to bring in new fans who.
So can I? Sorry,
yeah,
I feel like I keep interrupting you, but even on that Amazon Prime documentary, it was great. I really enjoyed it, but the people that are going to sit through and watch that are only the diehard fans. It was not a documentary for folks that just are casual Real Madrid fans because they would have been bored out of their mind. It was good, but it was all about the history and tradition of Real Madrid, and had color footage of Di Stefano and stuff like that playing. And it was really good. And they interview Amancio and all these different guys, Gallego and the Quinta del Butre and Casillas and all these different legends are sitting around a table, talking and sharing memories and stuff like that. And so a lot of that was great, but it was 100% for the diehard fan. And so you're I don't know what percentage of fans that is, but I think it's a small percentage. And if you're looking to grow your brand and grow and do something similar to the Netflix documentary F1, that wasn't it, because you're not capturing that group.
So reading your article and also hearing you talk makes you want to go and watch the documentary, which I haven't watched yet. The F1 one, I mean. So did you see The Last Dance?
Yeah. Yep.
So I thought, The Last Dance has to be the greatest documentary I've ever watched. I don't know how you can emulate that, because part of the story was also the story of Michael and his charisma and his greatness. So replicating that is going to be difficult to do. But what the really cool thing about that documentary was that everyone watched it across the board. Didn't matter whether you were a fan of basketball or not. Everyone enjoyed it. So something like that, I think, would be great if we could emulate that. And I'm not talking about, because we have the content, we have the quality and the history and the characters in our history to pull it off. But the execution of it, I think, it needs to be done in a certain way. It needs to be done by the right people, and the right access needs to be given. But the problem is the club always wants to be in control, and they want to give out their own image, and they're very biased in that aspect. So I think the ideal thing would be if someone outside was able to get access and also be given the keys to not make it totally one-sided. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it has to, even the Jordan doc and what F1 did, and the best documentaries, even the Maradona one that was on HBO, I thought that was fantastic. But what all those documentaries do is it's not that. Yes, it's obviously got footage and it's focused on the sport, but what it's truly focused on is the person and these human stories behind a sport, and kind of what any casual person can connect to, and these stories of triumph and difficulty, and so it's the behind the curtain scenes, and even a story on what Luka Modric went through, growing up in war-torn Croatia, and things of that nature would probably interest folks a lot more than just the history and tradition of Real Madrid.
With regards to docs and footage and all that stuff. This particular aspect is not a Real Madrid issue, but it's a La Liga issue. And something that I've been really passionate about, I think we've all been passionate about. I've actually had conversations with people at La Liga, texting people on the PR department, and they're just like, okay, we'll pass it on. Like, we hear you. The copyright stuff. The great thing about the NBA is that it actually allows fans to put footage out there and compilations and promote their league. Not only that, they actually do revenue sharing with them. And I just don't understand how primitive you have to be, even after all this time, 2022, to block and ban and bring down and take down every footage that people do to promote the league. And it's not like people are posting like full games, so that people don't have to pay for subscriptions. They're putting highlight packages or like interesting tactical tidbits of players and stuff that literally promote the league, and it gets shared. And La Liga just tears it down for the most primitive, backward reasons: copyright. They're not thinking clearly. They're not thinking progressively, and they're not thinking about the marketing side of things. Let people make the compilations. Let people on Managing Madrid or whoever put together clips to break down tactics. Let them do it. Don't take it down. And because these guys are like, for example, Managing Madrid is the biggest English Real Madrid website in the world. It caters to one of the major markets we're talking about, the US. And by the way, people from India too read that because they consume the English content. That's one of the markets that you can tap into that promotes your league and shows footage of it, and you're shutting that down. And there have been creative ways that the website has gone to upload clips and stuff, but it's probably only a matter of time until those got taken down. Let the football Twitter people put the compilations up. Let the football Twitter guys, the Cruz season, the Valverde season, the Modric season, the Registas, the Modric GOAT accounts, all of these football Twitter accounts, let them just promote your league, post clips and highlights. It's super backward. It's got to change. It has to change. It's really, really embarrassing and so backwards that they're still in this mindset of, copyright. We gotta take these kids down, block, ban, and not only just take it down, like get them banned from Twitter. Big Twitter accounts, by the way, who are just getting taken down left, right, and center. Like, I actually feel bad for them. They work hard to promote the league and get their accounts big, and they vanish because La Liga is just, sorry to say, they got sticks up their asses, man.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like my mind flashes to like that Mallorca Valencia game where Kubo was unreal. Like if somebody was able to put a montage together of Kubo's performance, and then it gets all these retweets and likes, and like, what do you think that's going to do? You think that's going to make people not want to all of a sudden, oh, you know what? I want to check out Mallorca. I want to see how good this kid really is. And you don't think that's going to happen? Of course, that's what's going to happen. Like, these clips make people want to watch a player and see these teams and see what's actually going on. And so, yeah, I'm 100% with you. It's so frustrating. And it's one of the first things when Liberty Media purchased F1, that's one of the first thing they did was relax the strict social media rules that they had. And so, like, imagine, like, yes, we're not saying, just imagine if La Liga all of a sudden allow that type of thing. Like, I think it would be huge for the league.
It undoubtedly would be huge. That would just be a simple step in the right direction, just to show us that they're competent in some way to do something like that. Is there anything else that we didn't hit on in terms of what your article touches, like the scope?
Well, I wanted, because I did get some like comments afterwards, and like I think people overlooked one line in my statement where I say, in creating what is ultimately a flawed product, the Super League, Florentino Perez had the right intentions.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, at the end of the day, like we all know that the Super League has issues. But that's not to say that, and you've said this numerous times, Kiyan, that's not to say that things can't be improved and football can't be improved. And a lot of the things we just talked about are those items. And so I think something has to change. Otherwise, it is worrisome about the next generation, because yes, the folks listening to this podcast and the folks that are watching every single Real Madrid game, like, yeah, you guys are going to stick around and you're going to watch it, but there's such a large percentage that aren't that invested right now. And so how do you get them hooked? How do you get them invested? And something's got to change in order to do that.
There's something's got to budge. I just don't see it budging anytime soon, because it's really hard to kind of to break down all the pillars and the columns and rebuild it, because there's so many leagues, so many entities, so many people involved, so much corruption. And even the Super League was just a badly executed deal, and it didn't include everyone. And honestly, while I do think from a financial perspective and a marketing perspective, no matter how much people say they wouldn't watch it, a Super League would be watched like crazy and would gain new fans probably. But what would that do to the Elches, for example? I don't want any of those smaller teams to go away. That's why I always wanted the whole Super League to be all-encompassing, to include everyone. Get relegated, get promoted, have multiple different leagues within it. You know what I mean?
And here, my mind just went to something else too, because I was thinking about kind of the gap that the Premier League has already started to produce here in the U.S. Like, all of my friends that are soccer fans are Premier League fans. They have a Premier League club. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this podcast can relate. Like, very few people are a Real Madrid or Barcelona fan. They're either an Arsenal, a Tottenham, a Chelsea, literally all, even guys on my various teams growing up. Like, it was rare for there to be another Real Madrid fan with me, or Barcelona fan. Usually it was someone of like Spanish heritage or something like that. And so, but of the Americans, they're almost all supporting Premier League teams. And so, what are ways to get around that La Liga could start doing? Well, they could even have post-match interviews in English. They could start doing things like that, like promoting their product in English and doing, like, I remember Phil Kitramalides, after he left Real Madrid TV, kind of went on a soapbox and said, like, the head of Real Madrid TV, the head of the communications there, only speaks Spanish. He does not speak a lick of English. How can the person who's running Real Madrid TV and running a global institution not speak any English? Like, how is that possible? And so that's like that type of stuff. Like, I feel like Spain is just still so far behind and so backward. And like, they need to get more progressive in that regard, and like start thinking of things like this and start doing things where you could really push the envelope. And I just feel like they're so conservative and safe and want to stay, just hold, maybe they think of it as traditions or this is how we've always done it. But at the end of the day, like, you got to start moving on to different avenues to try and build that fan base.
Yes, that's 100% correct. And people who have been listening to this podcast know that we've been very transparent about this and how the club operates also with different kinds of media outlets. But that aspect
too, that's a whole different subject too.
Well, that
goes with it. Like,
it's part of it.
Stop asking these questions, and like, we ask more engaging questions, and you let different media kind of have access, then you can reach a broader audience. And so, like, that's a part of it as well.
I did a Reddit AMA a couple of days ago, and a couple of things that I was asked, we want to know, like, what can the club change, like, in any aspect of the club, not necessarily on the pitch. Now, I think the next progression is dealing better globally with media outlets outside of Spain. and by that I mean just literally expanding out of their little nucleus bubble of people they give access to and exclusivity to and sources to, because all of those media outlets often just treat the club like shit in public. They don't ask the right questions, they give coaches a hard time, and they're the ones with access. Meanwhile, the ones who are actually analyzing them and promoting them in a proper way are shut out, and it's basically anyone outside of Spain. That's the next step. Dealing better with English media, basically, or any other languages. It's 2022. Everything is global. The internet has made the world smaller. Most of Real Madrid's fans are outside of Spain. That's literally a fact. So you got to cater to them better. They haven't gotten that far yet. They have to. That's the next step. That's the next progression for me. I think we hit it all. Let's see what Monday's musings bring in a couple days. Might bring us some more talking points, but Matt and I will actually be back tomorrow to do a historical segment. I want to set that up, so if in case people want to go ahead and watch the game before the podcast, which one we're doing?
Yeah, I gotta find. Yeah, it's a game. It's actually, I wanted to switch it up a little bit, so I also selfishly wanted like a decent broadcast for once. So we're doing a more recent game from 2008, and it's not a game against Barcelona or a game in the Champions League. I wanted to switch it up a little bit. It's a thriller against Athletic Bilbao in La Liga from 2008. We're talking young Gonzalo Higuain, Van der Vaart, Guti, Gago, Heinze, Cannavaro, Casillas, you name it. So should be a fun one to kind of roll back the years. Oh, even young Marcelo too. So it'll be fun to watch that.
All right, so Matt and I will be back to watch that and break that down tomorrow. Historical segment, long overdue, and it's the slowest time of year, so now is the time to do these podcasts. So catch us tomorrow, and we'll also catch you guys over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid on Tuesday and Thursday, and basically every Tuesday and every Thursday at the very least. So catch you guys over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and we'll talk tomorrow.
Thanks, Kiyan.
All right, before we wrap it up, we wanted to give a shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. They do so much to support the show and make it possible. And we wanted to give a specific shout out to our $10 plus patrons, because if you pledge $10 or more, not only do you get guaranteed responses to your questions, but you also get a specific shout out on the podcast. So shout out to Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Wei Paring, Wamik Jamal, Umar Mahadi, Tyler Simon, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Tariq Goktas, Talib Salhab, Tahmid Kalam, Sushank Damala, Sujai Wani, Sumanchu Singh, Shivam Tiwari, Sherry Sorial, Sheikh Hatiri, Shamil, Shabaz Sharipov, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samir Z, Said Mahad, Sai Mohan Sasil Kumar, Rodrigo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Udaifari, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Zapatero Zubiare, Nicholas Moller, Nick Ribeiro, Nelson Masariego, Muxi Thangal, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Martin Ridman, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jason Fitz, Ian Marley, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Antakiro, Frederick Sundros, Faisal Hamdan, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Christian Toft, Christian Acosta, Charles Williams, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Ashik Bashar, Armand Gashi, Armando L, Anton Zrudenko, Anirudh Singh, Alexi Ceniceros, Al, Aizaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalukovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Varun Ramtin Mahrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. Love you guys all. Take care, and Hala Madrid.